Hi, Maxwell. Um, Thanks for reaching out
Yeah,
to speak with me. Just wanted to record this for other students in case they find the questions and answers interesting. Um, and yeah, happy to answer questions.
okay. So my name is Maxwell from Ghana, and I was having a little bit of problem with I have an experience in JavaScript. I have a little bit of experience in JavaScript and Python. And however, when I'm implementing or solving problems with Python, I'm really good at it. However, when it comes to JavaScript, when it comes to JavaScript,
Mm.
I have issues implementing the code and the algorithms and also implementing it in the React library. So I was thinking if you had any tips I could use, I'll be very grateful.
Yeah, I think this is a very common thing. So when I first learned programming, I think I learned Java first, but then got very good at Ruby. And then switching from Ruby to JavaScript was a bit of a challenge for me, just because I was really familiar with that language, and the tools for debugging, like how to understand code, how to like sort of see what was going on and find the answer to a question. I knew the libraries. I sort of just was comfortable. And so it just takes time to get comfortable in a different language. So I'd say one piece of advice is that um, you need to spend lots of time in a given language in order to build up that comfort. Um, for JavaScript, I think understanding the sort of object and function, like sort of the way that JavaScript treats um, those things is very important. It's true in any language, but I think it's especially true in JavaScript. There's a few things that I think are particularly good resources for this. So if you're just trying to get like the basics of JavaScript, I think Eloquent JavaScript is a good textbook. It's for free online. And then if you've gotten through that and you want to get deeper into JavaScript, there's a few resources that I think are great. Javascript.info is a good, very comprehensive resource. Dan Abramov's Just JavaScript is, I think, very concise, but I think speaks to a couple of the really key pieces of the language. And then Kyle Simpson's got a couple of it's sort of a book series. It used to be called I guess it's a You Don't Know JavaScript Yet, I think is um, the name, but there's a bunch of different sort of books or chapters within it, covering the language in great detail. So I'd say that those are some resources that I think are particularly helpful for learning the language. Um, I would also, you mentioned React. I would differentiate a little bit the sort of React debugging and learning from the JavaScript learning. If you've got a really strong grasp of JavaScript, then that makes a lot of the React stuff a lot easier. Um, Again, I think that the like going through the sort of big resources on it, I think is really key. Digging into sort of how React works. I also think that in the docs there's a page on thinking in React, which I think is probably still the most important thing to read and revisit as a React developer. Just like, oh, this is how to design components in state that are gonna work. Um, React is a very big library. It's got a lot of surface area. Focusing on the core, I think, is a good way to start. And then, yeah, I mean, it's a big ecosystem. You have to build a lot of things in order to get familiar, and learn how to solve problems that you encounter.
Okay. Okay, so my second question is how do you go about solving complex problems in code, going about the algorithms and solutions? Okay.
Solving complex problems in code, especially involving algorithms. So I think the more complex a problem, the more it needs to like be broken down into pieces. I think there's there's a lot of advice about sort of like getting things working very quickly, building solutions iteratively. And I think that that's very good advice, particularly when it comes to sort of product software, where there's going to be a lot of like user interactions, and you need to figure out what it is that you're building. When it comes to algorithmic software, something that's got more of a software design or software architecture, I think that those are cases where more upfront planning is justified, and you can figure out more of the problems sort of on paper or on the whiteboard before you actually go and write any code. And those problems, I think, yeah, you need to break them down into pieces, and then to me, the approach that tends to work well is to try to find the hardest piece, the one that has the most risk or the most confusion around it. Like, oh, this one seems really important and key. I need to figure out how to do this like core piece first, and then once that piece is answered, then it's like, oh well, the rest of these pieces, just like, how do I get the input into this? How do I get the sort of the rest of the plumbing to work? Those pieces can be easy. I think when it comes to actually developing software, developing a solution, setting up a system so that you can get feedback quickly is super important. So setting up your editor so that you can run your tests at sort of one key press, or run the file with some sample input, figuring out shortcuts to make it so that you can very quickly write a piece of code and then run that code to see the results. As you're actually developing the solution, sort of the most important thing is to have that really, really tight feedback loop. But different kinds of problems require different kinds of solutions. So there's no just one answer to that question. So yeah, I say algorithms has a different thing, that a different sort of shape of response than like building a product.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So with my last question, so I tried LeetCode, and I tried LeetCoding certain solutions on their websites, and with most of them, I can't solve it. However, when I look at the answers and I solve them, I understand. But when it comes to me implementing it by myself, that's this issue I'm having. So what solution do you give to that?
Yeah, this is a really, really common thing where the tools that you used in the solution, it's still always going to be the basics. It's like, well, there's a for loop and an array or a list, and then I accumulate some values and then return a response. Or, there's some other, using the same concepts that are in sort of the beginner's tutorial for any language, you can achieve things that are very complicated solutions to come up with and invent out of your head. And so even though you look at the solution, you're like, well, it's just another for loop. It looks just like the code that I've written. Coming up with that and trying to do it yourself is still really challenging. The solution to learning how to do this, I think there's a couple of different things. So one, I think that that practice of going and trying LeetCode, looking at the answers and reading some code to see how some solutions work, those are really good steps. It does just like take seeing some solutions in order to like see what possibilities there are, and then practicing, starting with the easiest ones, and then going back and revisiting ones that you struggled with in the past. I think is a really good habit to get into. There are a number of common patterns for like what kinds of problems they have in those kinds of challenges. And once you've seen a number of them, you can start to recognize like, this is the kind of problem that this is asking. And I know that this is going to be a solution that requires a dictionary, or I know that this is a solution that's going to require like walking through the array and counting something up at each point. So there's a set of ones that you can just sort of pattern match to eventually once you've memorized a bunch of answers. And then there's some algorithm questions that require a trick. And for those, it's sort of hit or miss on whether or not you're going to like recognize the trick. And so for sort of getting to be a pro at LeetCode and knowing how to solve all of the hard problems often requires just banging your head against a lot of problems. And so just putting in that practice every day, going through the course material and learning the programming 1, programming 2, data structures and algorithms, you do end up learning a lot of just sort of how to think about those kinds of problems. And if you keep practicing, you do eventually get a breakthrough. I don't have a lot of like specific advice other than like keep practicing, and you will learn how to solve this.
Okay, Rob, thank you very much. I think I'm okay for now.
Awesome. How are classes going so far?
So far so good. I've been able to implement certain things I'm taught in class, and with optimizing your learning, programming, and web development, and communication for success, I've been able to implement it, and so far so good. It's helping me, and I see the changes it's bringing to my life. So yeah, it's kind of great.
Awesome. What tools? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel confident daily, every day. I feel confident with
Good.
my programming languages.
Yeah, I think the design of the program is supposed to, as you complete your work, as you learn each new thing, you get that confirmation like, yes, I did this, I checked this off, I can do this. It doesn't mean it's locked in there forever. You do have to like return to it and keep practicing. But hopefully that feedback is built in. What tools are you using as you're learning?
So I'm using VS Code. I use VS Code. I
Mhm.
use sometimes I use the terminal on my laptop. Sometimes I like to use a terminal.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, sometimes I like to use a terminal to navigate through and just git clone my repo and push it later.
Mhm.
And so I use VS Code. I have the Python extension installed in my VS Code. And I also have some extensions like Prettier. I have there's this HTML editor. It's an extension you use to check your HTML tags, and
Uh-huh.
it rectifies any mistakes you've done. So I use those extensions to rectify my code if I'm having any wrong mistakes or any coding error. So I
Mhm.
use them to check it, rectify,
Awesome.
and sometimes to mostly even yesterday you saw that I tagged you on Discord and you came to reply me. Yeah, so I went to check it and I rectified the problem and I scored everything. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're asking for support on Discord when you run into any kind of issue. Um, yeah, I think hopefully soon more students will be responding because more students will say, "Oh, actually, I know how to solve that one. Here's a tip
Yeah,
that really helped me." Instead of the instructors being the ones who are mostly supporting. But definitely good to have Discord be considered one of your tools as you're problem solving.
yes.
Awesome. Well, yeah, as you find other VSCode extensions or tools that you like to use, I think sharing those with the rest of your class and other students, they would probably also appreciate those.
Yeah. So you can use Prettier to beautify your code.
Mhm.
And you can also turn on the autosave and it will save your code each time you change something on it. So you can use PTI, you can use there's this HTML. I don't remember the name, but there's this HTML extension you can use to check your HTML. And there's PTR, you can also install the Python program in your VS Code. Yeah, they have an extension for it, so you can install it and run everything in your VS Code terminal. Yeah, so I think that's all for now. Yeah, I think that's all for now.
Have you looked into using any of the AI tools? The like GitHub has Copilot, or there's a couple other sort of like AI chat or code completion tools?
Well, I haven't looked at any AI tool for now.
Mhm.
However, when I get codes I don't understand, I paste it in ChatGPT to explain it to me, and it helps me really understand it and breaks it down. Sometimes I also tell it to give me the beginner level code to better understand my code. And before for yesterday like this, I saw a Python code where it used functions with the exercise we were doing, the assignments we were giving. So the person used functions to do his. However, when I sent it to ChatGPT to explain it to me, it explained everything perfectly and also gave me a beginner's code to better understand the code. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's a really good.
that's what.
It sounds like a really good strategy to sort of work on your code and make sure you can type it out. Just like the LeetCode solutions, it's like looking at the solutions not enough. You have to be able to solve it yourself. But
Exactly.
when you get stuck, asking ChatGPT or asking, looking at the LeetCode solution or asking in Discord, having ways to get unstuck or get an alternative explanation or just have the first explanation, those are really good. I think one of the things that before ChatGPT, when I was learning, I would do a lot of like searching. It was like, okay, I'm getting this error when I run my code. Let me copy and paste the error into Google and say, okay, well, what is this error? What does this mean?
Yeah.
Now we've got ChatGPT, which we can say, I can paste the whole error and my code and say, hey, what's going on here? And it'll give an explanation
Yeah.
sort of to my problem and not just like somebody else's Stack Overflow problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Any other not tools, but habits that you have as you're learning and practicing?
So I make sure to be disciplined. That's the only thing. You have to be disciplined and schedule your times well, and make sure to practice, put in the work. Because if you don't put in the work, actually, last week was an intense week. I did my assignments on the weekend. I didn't get time to do it during the working days, so I did it on the weekend. And only like it was intense. I even decided to call my advisor, my country advisor. However, I said, "Oh, let me just go through it." And later today, she got to me and I told her everything, and they said, "Oh, I should keep up. Yeah, everything will be okay." Yeah, so it's going great. It's going great. Yeah, so you have to be disciplined. You have to schedule your time well and yeah, put in the work. And that's all.
Yeah, there's a
Get
lot of
there.
work. I think the first few weeks are particularly challenging because you're setting up a lot of the systems for the first time. A lot of the tools are new or unfamiliar. And later in the term, it's like, well, the concepts will get more challenging, but you'll have used all of the tools before. And so it's all like, okay, that part I've got. And it's just the actual content to focus on and not like how do I submit this assignment? How do I get the assignment into VS Code? Um, what Um, what's been the hardest assignment so far, or just an assignment that's really stood out to you?
So the hardest so far was the programming one assignments we were given last week.
Mhm.
And so there was no test for the bill calculator. There was no test to test the code whether you had it correct. You had to submit it on the VSCode app to check your score. And when I checked it, I had 5.0. So tomorrow I'll be having office hours with Mohammed. And when I run the code in my terminal, it works perfect. But I don't know when I submit it on the VSCode, I get error. So tomorrow I'll be having a chat with Mohammed during office hours to walk me through what I did wrong and what's not.
Yeah. So most of the programming one exercises and projects have tests, and they say, here's exactly what was expected and what wasn't there. And that bill calculator, it doesn't have those tests. It has the instructions, and the instructions say very clearly exactly what like needs to be input and output. But the tests that are running on Gradescope, are not ones that are provided to you. So you don't get to see, oh, here's exactly what the output needs to be. So it can look correct, but then it doesn't have the word exactly correct in the output, or it doesn't match exactly what the tests are expecting. So it is, that one is particularly challenging. What are you interested to build once you've got the skills from these classes?
So with the web foundation, I'm looking to build a website for a travel niche where they'll call it Afro Tour. So I'll make sure to run the website myself, where I'll use it to tour. I'll share the links to other people where they can book a visit to any place in Ghana. And maybe in the future, we'll do it to the whole world, and you all can join us and we'll tour the world together. So I'll build a website with my web development skills. And so with the Python, last 2 weeks, I saw this post on LinkedIn where when the person moves his or her hand, you see the AI imitating it. So I plan on building that also. And yeah, doing exciting things with what I'm about to learn. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to see the Afro Tour site and everything else that you end up building.
Yeah. Rob, could I ask you a question?
Go for it.
So you see, with the CSS, we have other resources you can, like Bootstrap, like Tailwind. Do you recommend reusing that? As during our orientation, you were saying things like plagiarism and not copying things from the internet and doing your own thing. Do you recommend reusing Tailwind and CSS when we get to the advanced part of CSS, not right now?
Yeah.
Get to that.
It's a good question. I think one of these confusing things as you're learning software development is like, there's all of these libraries. There's a lot of code that you want to use from someone online, but that interacts with the sort of academic honesty and citation of sources. And like, am I allowed to use this? Is a question that happens all the time. So I'd say in general, open source projects are intended for other people to use. And so the goal is not to say like, oh, I'm using Tailwind or I'm using Bootstrap, I made this, I invented it on my own. It's like, no. It's intended for other people to use it. Now, you're supposed to, cite them and say, yes, I'm using Tailwind and Bootstrap, but that's sort of built in to, like, you sort of have to say, oh yeah, I'm using Tailwind. It's right here in my project's dependencies. And there's licenses on those projects that permit you to use them given particular requirements that are slightly different for different projects. So some things, if you use them, you have to cite it in a particular way, but for the most part, those are intended to be used. Those are also not something that would violate like an academic honesty or integrity policy. For the most part, in the assignments for the course, using those wouldn't give you a leg up, because the goal is to actually implement sort of things using the raw CSS and to apply particular styles to components. And so it's not gonna help. I would say as a learning objective, Tailwind and Bootstrap are a little bit different. Tailwind requires that you know a lot of CSS in order to use Tailwind effectively. Bootstrap, because it gives you whole components, you can actually get away using Bootstrap without knowing a lot of CSS. And so I'd say of the two, as a learning experience, as an engineer, I also prefer to use Tailwind because it's like it's just a tool that fits my workflow really well. But I'd say as a learning guide, I would recommend learning Tailwind. You sort of have to learn the basics of CSS before you can use Tailwind effectively. And so I would focus on just like, you should learn CSS, and then you can learn Tailwind, and it can help make you more effective as a designer and as a front-end developer. For a project that you're building on your own, if you wanted to right now go and build a site, and you don't know enough CSS to get it done, and I'm not saying this is true for you, but it could be true for someone else, and you'd like to build that site, and you don't really care about the learning part, then go ahead and use a tool, whether that's Bootstrap or whether it's WordPress or Webflow or some other tool that like gets the job done. It's like totally fine to like not spend a lot of time to learn CSS. For lots and lots of people, their goal is not to learn CSS, but to learn or to actually make some website. If your goal is to make a website, is like you should go and make the website and not like stop and learn a bunch of stuff. You can make things using tools, and it's like totally fine. The difference is that if you go and make a site using WordPress or an equivalent tool, you won't necessarily come away from that experience having learned a bunch about HTML and CSS, those are necessary skills if you'd like to be a powerful user of those tools in the future. When learning for your classes, it's like really important to focus on like learning those fundamentals so that you can go and use those tools later. I'd say for a project that's more open-ended, it's worth asking your instructor each time just to like confirm that you can use like whatever tools you want. But we definitely have a lot of students who use frameworks, whether it's Bootstrap or Tailwind or any other ones, in the sort of open-ended projects.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I think that will do.
Any other questions for me?
No. I think I've exhausted all my questions.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Before we go, any advice for Kibo students or anybody else who's looking to learn computer science?
So if you are looking to learn computer science, I'm telling you, go for it and make sure you put in the work. Make sure you put in the time, be consistent. I'm looking forward to starting 100 days of Python with other Kibo students. So be up for the challenge and yeah, put in the work, be disciplined. And yeah, I think that'll get you there. You become best in whatever, and make sure you become good at whatever you are doing. Whatever you are doing, be the best of it. Okay. Yeah.
Awesome advice. Thanks so much, Maxwell. Thanks for reaching out, and good luck in your classes.
Okay, thank you too.
Have a good night.
Good night.